Now let's focus on a bit further down the table, focus on some of the European hopefuls, which teams might want to sneak into the Europa League, have dreams of European qualification, such a big deal for them attracting players for the next season, getting extra revenue, and just having that aura being we're a European team, we are going to be playing midweek, and that is a big deal for a lot of these teams in the Premier League, and it's quite close. There's a lot of teams we've seen swapping around those spots in the last few years, and I'm going to start, Nick Mendola, with your beloved Newcastle United. Their superb finish to last season. Sven Botman's coming at centre-back. They spent big on him. It looks like they may spend big late in the window. Do you think they can keep that positive momentum going? And do you think they can challenge for 7th top 8 spot? Because everybody thinks that Eddie Howe is going to do that. You look at the betting markets, and there's a lot of money on Newcastle to maybe sneak into that top 6 or 7 conversation. Are you that confident about Newcastle this season?
I'm not that confident, but I am confident. And the reason is mostly because, and you guys know, I had a love, but I wish he wasn't our manager relationship with Steve Bruce. And they have a manager now. And the fact of the matter is, I say it that way because I'm not telling you Eddie Howe is a genius, but he's an actual manager. He's got a plan here. And the collection of talent, half of what happened last year that made them better, obviously they bought Bruno Guimaraes, who's incredible. I mean, just a very good player. I think he'll continue to make his mark. But really, the pieces were being put in real soccer places. They were really being put in places to succeed, and they will be a lot better. I also like that of course, being that Newcastle was the nouveau riche, they were linked with a lot of names that there wasn't really any smoke behind them. But any name that there was has been a smart one. Ashworth coming over from Brighton has pushed a lot of the right buttons. And even now when they're talking about a Werner loan, or they're talking about buying Maxwell Cornet from Burnley for 15 million, they're not being drawn out to these crazy prices that we thought. So they've addressed center back, they've addressed center mid, they've addressed goalkeeper when they had a pretty good goalkeeper to start with. And if they can get that front three humming, there's reason to think they will absolutely be in the discussion. It's just a matter of, is it too soon against these teams like West Ham and Leicester and Brighton, who have gone through the battle a little bit now and who have had that experience. I have a colleague from the hockey side of things who always say the playoffs are a process. When you get into the playoffs, you have to experience them before you really start making a run, unless you're in MLS. And this is my question here, is the process here for Newcastle. I think at some points there will be some growing pains because all these players came here expecting to play in Europe.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, Trippier coming in, Nick Pope's a great sign, and it's kind of just that next tier of players, and they're building slowly and steadily to be a Leicester, be a West Ham, be in that rung of clubs just underneath the top 6. And they're looking very set, especially with some of the attacking players. Callum Wilson, St. Maximin, Almiron's looked really good in pre-season. So, yeah, it's going to be a good season on Tyneside. I definitely think so. Going down to the other end of the country, Brighton down on the south coast, Andy. I mean, they lost Yves Bissouma. They're battling to keep Marc Cucurella, which looks like he might go to Chelsea. Some big losses there, but you'd think they'd maybe be able to reinvest that and maybe some better additions up top, which is where they've struggled the last few seasons, actually put away the copious amount of chances they create game after game. If they could be more clinical, I mean, they're lovely to watch. Brighton could be a team that really breaks into the top 6 or 7, right? I mean, on paper, we look at their body of work over a season. There are very few reasons to say why they cannot finish in the European spots.
I know this is going to be unpopular amongst us, just the 3 of us here. Okay. But I think there's always a lot of teams that have the potential to do that. And I think we kind of talk ourselves into some of them, and Brighton probably being an example of having a better chance to do that than they really do, simply for the way that they play, because it is fun to watch. It is aesthetically pleasing. It is the right way to play. It is good possession. It's good football. But if you don't have one of those kind of clinical strikers, a goal scorer, it doesn't even have to be a striker. It could be Mohamed Salah, who plays off of one of the wings. But if you go around Europe and go around the Premier League, especially, the teams in contention for that have just an identifiable who is the man up top, and they don't have that. And I don't know how a club of their size with their resources is going to you have to almost unearth who's going to be the next, breakout star, maybe like an Ismail Assar from a few years ago when he came over, made his way to Watford. It seemed like they might have one on their hands, and he might still kind of be that type of player, but you need to hit on someone that you're not supposed to, I think, at one of those goal scoring positions. And so it's going to be the same thing again this year. It really is. It's going to be really good stuff from Graham Potter's team because that's just what they do. And we're going to have the same conversations in September and October and probably January and March. This season could have been so much more with just a little bit more. And I think that's just kind of their fate. And I think that's a great fate to have, to be pretty comfortably every season a mid-table Premier League side, even if you don't really have a realistic opportunity of making that next step forward.
Yeah, Brighton establish a mid-table. I think they're going to make a big push for Europe this season. We love Potterball here at PST. Leicester City, no new arrivals as of yet. Kasper Schmeichel looks like he might move on. Yuri Tielemans, Wesley Fofana, James Maddison are attracting big bids. I mean, this is a big few months for Leicester, right, Nick, in terms of the project under Brendan Rodgers. Obviously, they won the FA Cup. They've gone far in Europe. For a club of their size and the resources, it almost feels like they've hit their ceiling and they're a bit lost and they're just wandering around trying to figure out what's next. So if they lose those players, is Leicester actually a team that could, in theory, drop out of European contention and just be, in mid-table or maybe even further down? What are we expecting from the Foxes this season?
Yeah, the worry with them is the same worry that I might have for a Brighton or a number of these teams where a very good player or two or three becomes four, becomes five. And look, they've signed smartly. And Andy and I talk about this all the time when we kind of text, Leicester's interested in this player. They must be a good player. The identification is key. But I just kind of look around and how many of these players are not disillusioned, but a little distracted, a little off of their goals. Also, I don't mean to cut this short, but guys, is Jamie Vardy going to be able to keep running that much forever? He might be an alien. He's fueled by like Twinkies and rocket fuel. But I start to wonder at some point, this is a big task for Brendan Rodgers, and this is why they signed him and a big test of his mettle.
Yeah, I mean, Vardy, I think it's vodka-soaked Skittles. That's
what it was, yeah.
But yeah, it's big. They can't keep expecting him to perform miracles week in, week out, can they? So I do worry about Leicester a little bit this season. Andy, West Ham United spent big in the summer. Agard's been hurt in pre-season, their big centre-back arrival. So that hurts West Ham massively. That was an area where they needed to upgrade. But Scamacca coming in from Sassuolo, Italian international striker. They spent big on another striker once again, West Ham. I mean, this is a solid unit. They've managed to keep it together. Declan Rice is still around. Yeah. But what do you think they can do this season? I guess it all depends on how seriously they're going to take the Conference League, right? If they don't take it that seriously, I can see them being in and around the top 6, maybe even the top 4 again, because they are a horrible team to play against. And like Nick mentioned earlier, they got the experience of having these top 6 push season after season now.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the recruitment because I think it ties together nicely the point on Leicester there that Nick made. And while I was really high on the signings they made last summer, I think they missed on most of them, at least in year one. And maybe it's a bounce back time. And it feels like West Ham, anytime they go for a big money signing, it feels like those are the ones that they get wrong. And those are the ones you can't get wrong if you're going to push to try to, put yourself into the conversation for those top spots in the Premier League. Obviously, they've hit on, much more bargain signings like Jared Bowen, bringing him in. But Saeed Benrahma is probably going to leave the club for next to nothing. They spent 30-40 million on him just a couple of years ago. Sebastian Aller, who, had a very brief stint at the club before being moved on as well. It just feels like, and maybe it's that position. It's obviously hard to find those elite goal scorers because everybody wants them and there's so few of them to go around, but they have to start hitting on their big signings if they're going to make that next step. Otherwise they're just a little bit more defensive. They're the David Moyes version of what Brighton are under Graham Potter. Is they're going to be a solid team and they'll be tough to beat, but they'll beat themselves enough times in a season that they can't realistically, I think, be considered a threat for one of those top 6 spots.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting, though, to see which team can break in and qualify for Europe from that batch of teams. And over at Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, we'll keep you updated with all the latest news from those European hopefuls, previews, how to watch information, team news. We'll have you covered with every single game they play this season in the Premier League.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches and much more.